Pardon? Hi, how are you? Yeah. Oh, of course. How are you? Yeah. Next on the program, I'd like to bring up the Democrats of the Year award winners from last year for the presentation of this year's award. While I was knocking on doors last year frequently for candidates around the state and different parts of the state, I would see on Facebook how this year's winners were out knocking on doors after work and on the weekends, and I'd be inspired to go out and do it all over again. Would Mary Kubicki and Joellen Storrs come forward to make this presentation for this year's award winners?
There you go. Hi, everybody. Mary and I are very humbled that last year we were chosen as the Democrats of the Year, and we're very honored this year to be able to award that designation to two people that many of us know, everyone in this room should know, and know are very well deserving, John and Jennifer Franco. Now, I thought I knew everything about John and Jennifer Franco. I mean, I knew they liked to volunteer, I knew they were teachers, I knew they were actively involved in theater in Antioch at the PMNL, and if you haven't had a chance to go see them, you should. Mary and I did that last month. We had a very nice time. They're very talented, particularly John. He was in the lead at, I think the name of it's The Games Afoot. Was that the name of the show? Yeah. So it was, Sherlock Holmes. It was a very fun evening, so I would recommend definitely taking the short trip down to the PMNL Theater in Antioch to see John and Jen. But I found, looking at their biography, I found a few things that I think are worth noting that I didn't know. One of the things that I discovered about John is that he has not only one master's degree, but he has two master's degrees. He has a master's degree in philosophy from Trinity International University, and he has a second master's degree in educational leadership from Northern Illinois University. So we have many teachers in this room and many successful people who realize what an accomplishment that is and what in my book gives him a great resume that he has worked so hard to improve his abilities as a teacher because he does work in education. So I'm very impressed with that. He's currently, I didn't realize, an adjunct college instructor, and I knew he was a high school history teacher, but he also teaches AP government, and of course we all know John is a Kenosha County Board Supervisor, and we're very glad that he is one of our supervisors in Kenosha County. He does a great job for all of us, so thank you for that, John. Now moving on to Jennifer, she has a bachelor's degree in English from Illinois State University. She teaches English and speech communication at Mundelein High School in Mundelein, Illinois, and she and John have been married since 1995. Some of the highlights that I can say that are in the book is that after Act 10 was passed, they were actively involved in protesting Act 10, as many in this room were. They were also actively involved in the recall effort against Scott Walker. They were out pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, doing everything that a good Democrat can do to try and move a progressive agenda forward. They are at every election. You know who you can count on to come out and help get out the vote will be John and Jennifer Franco. They are dependable, someone we can always count on, and another reason why we're giving them this award this year for Democrat of the Year. They've helped multiple candidates, including Bob Wirch. They have knocked on over 500 doors. They worked hard to elect Tony Evers, Mandela Barnes, Josh Colt, and Tammy Baldwin, among a few of the other candidates that they've worked for. So it is our privilege to ask John and Jen to come up.
That's what I say.
Where's Sally?
I don't know. Where's the things?
Sally was supposed to bring them up.
She's got it.
Go ahead, Greg.
Hi. And I also just wanted to add a couple of comments after Joellen's great speech about John and Jennifer Franco, is that the two of them never expected any kind of awards or honors for the things that they do. They are the silent majority that works behind all the Democrats to get them elected, and we need people like them behind all of us to make us successful and to make the Democratic Party successful. So thank you for all your hard work.
Okay, I'm a speech teacher and we're into theater, so you give us a microphone, we're gonna use it. Okay.
Yes, okay. Here we go. Good evening. It's so great to see all these Democrats here in one spot, all this energy. It's great. Thanks for coming. We'd like to thank especially the Kenosha County Democratic Party Board for this honor. In fact, I'd like to recognize the entire board for all their hard work, and in particular, ensuring that the Democratic Party has a strong footing in Kenosha County. So if you wouldn't mind, I would like to ask the, let me call the board members, Roland and Evelyn Pizzala. Would you stand, please? Ken and Sally Simpson. Where's Ken and Sally? There they are over there. Tyson Froh. Tyson's here, I know. Mike Peltier. Mike's here. There's Mike over there. Joe Dubanowitz, I believe, is here. Is Joe here? There he is. We also have Joe Cardinale, Alex Moskovich, and of course I'd like to also recognize Norm Seiler, as you all know, who passed away last week. He was a great member of the party, so congratulations. Thank you.
So when John and I started canvassing, doing doors, years ago, we had to overcome some individual personal fears. I was concerned that I wouldn't know enough about all the current events and issues to be able to have conversations with people.
And frankly, I didn't want to bother people.
So we devised a compromise. John was a little uncomfortable about me going door to door by myself.
So I would follow along slowly in my Prius.
Which did not look creepy at all. Not in the least. So John graduated to following me walking along on the sidewalk as I knocked on doors.
Which looked slightly less creepy.
People were nearly always friendly. You know, Wisconsin nice is a real thing. And I would often get into good conversations. Every once in a while, though, someone would ask me about an issue, and I'd need to phone a friend.
So she'd shout out to me, standing on the corner, "Hey, John, what's the difference again between a marginal and effective tax rate?"
And he'd get that gleam in his eye, you know, the one that history teachers get when asked about economic policy. Walk up to the door and explain. But then John, and if you know him well, he would listen too. Because that really is the cornerstone of door-to-door canvassing. Listening to people's concerns and questions.
The English author Ashley Brilliant once wrote, "If you think communication is all talking, where am I? Then you haven't been listening." When we all communicate with our neighbors and canvass in neighborhoods, the dialogue begins with questioning and listening.
You know, so often people say, "Oh, you mustn't speak about politics." But really, these conversations that we're having with people are not so much about politics. They are instead about people's lives.
That's right. Whether it's fair progressive taxes, fair wages, equal economic opportunities,
Access to affordable health care and quality schools,
clean air and water,
reproductive rights and LGBTQ rights,
voting rights and fair maps,
sensible gun legislation,
and the support of workers and labor.
these are all issues that impact people's lives on a daily basis. You know, in these polarized times, these conversations are even more important as they are a way to provide information and clarity.
So, we must continue reaching out, asking questions, listening, and communicating with our neighbors. We can't be afraid to bother people in a Wisconsin nice sort of way.
You know, back in 2008, President Obama inspired us to start the conversation.
He wrote, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek."
In addition, President Obama asked, do we settle for the world as it is, or do we work for the world as it should be?
So in whatever way you can, this year and in 2020, march up to those literal and figurative doors.
With a smile on your face and a gleam in your eye.
And listen, really listen. Then share your information and tell your story. After a while, people begin to see the commonalities that we all share.
Because these conversations really can change hearts and minds, or at least make people look again, which is the definition of the word respect, to look again.
So thanks again for this honor. We look forward to seeing you all on the streets.
And we don't mean that in a creepy way. Thank you very much.
Well, that was quite something. Pretty amazing. Congratulations, John and Jen. Great job. Great job here tonight, but also a great job in the elections. Thank you very much. Before the next presentation is made, I would just like to take a second and thank Peter Barca not only for his decades of tireless service to Kenosha and Wisconsin, but personally for his mentoring in the Assembly and also our great friendship. To bring this presentation forward tonight, I'd like to call up our District Attorney, Michael Gravely.
All right, I feel lonely. I don't have a tag team partner up here. That looks like it's working well. So I was honored and surprised to be asked to be the person who led our celebration of Peter Barca today. I was surprised because it seems to be a less than clever move to give a lawyer control of a microphone. And honored, but then understood and thought to myself, well, I may be one of the few people in the room who has no embarrassing stories to tell about Peter Barca. And so perhaps that was the strategy devised here, and it was a wise one by the management who put this together. I am happy he showed up on time. Every time I come to see anything with Mr. Barca, he's late. I noticed for his own award, he's here perfectly on time. We're going to take this moment at this annual banquet to thank Peter Barca for all that he's meant to Kenosha and, frankly, to the state of Wisconsin. And there are years of service to thank him for. He was, in his young years, a special education or special needs teacher, and so served us in that fashion. Has been an employment specialist in a variety of jobs where he tirelessly worked for fair wages and job creation in this and other parts of the state. He's been Kenosha's representative, our own treasured representative, for now 20 years. both 2 stints in the Assembly and then that term in Congress. And so we've had an opportunity to say and have many things to be thankful for. But in the end, I think that Peter Barca's legacy for us is the fight that he made against Act 10 as those historic moments in this state occurred. And I think in the end, we thank him for his legacy of resistance and what he showed us on those days. Peter Barca led the Assembly Democrats, and whether it was the longest debate I'm aware of in the history of the Assembly, or whether it was committee meetings where he went viral on YouTube as being a person who called for the simple rule of law to be abided by the Republican Party as they changed literally the face of this state and its politics. As he faced a governor and a party that was willing to violate all of the norms, that was willing to break all the rules, to roll back the clock and take decades of progress of social justice and economic justice from those who had worked so hard, and from a progressive tradition back from the days of La Follette to the days of 2010 and that election, and then 2011, all that had been fought for by so many in this state, now in tremendous jeopardy as he fought those battles. And I would suggest to you that in those battles, character is defined. Because when you believe something passionately, and when those who oppose you and are fighting against you are willing to stop at nothing and are willing to break all the rules, then how you choose to fight back defines you. And finally, it defined all of us. And here is where I believe that Peter Barca will be judged so generously by history. Because he met those outrages. He met all of what I've stated. And he showed you can oppose those who won't act legally, who won't act openly, who won't act fairly, by simply shaming them with the quality of your character, by simply using civil dialogue to oppose all the absurdities and outrages that he faced, by simply demanding laws be followed as they are trodden over by those who oppose. And he kept predicting that this year, this day would happen. He kept predicting 2018 would come. He said on the Capitol steps in 2011, and many of you were there, rights die hard in the heartland. Rights die hard in Wisconsin. Peter Barca told us that. And you and I will have an opportunity to tell our grandchildren that we knew Peter Barca, that we were led by Peter Barca by example, that we looked to Peter Barca because now Democrats is our moment of restoration. Now, could it be more fitting that he is in the cabinet that begins the process of restoring to Wisconsin to what it was, to restore open and inclusive government? That is the legacy we have from Peter Barca. He shows us by his example how to endure the worst and then to restore what is ours in this state. Join me, ladies and gentlemen, join me, fellow Democrats, in honoring Peter Barca.
Thank you.
Oh,
Wow, that's fantastic. Wow, great. I'll put that on my shelf in my office. Very nice. Well, thank you, Mike, for those eloquent and words, and far more generous than I deserve, I can assure you. But I am so humbled to be here. Thanks for this wonderful award and recognition. I honestly feel like I am here to thank you. I am so appreciative for the opportunities that I've got out of serving the Kenosha Racine area. And I can assure you, you know, a day never went by when I walked into the Capitol that I was not grateful to represent a great community like the greater Kenosha and the greater Racine area. It just brought me such joy because of the type of people that we are down in this corner of the state. And of course, we have our great Lieutenant Governor here who will be speaking shortly, and that great victory, because they work so hard, and I'll talk about that. But of course, I'll also say we sure helped in Kenosha County. And it's all of you that work so hard and tirelessly to help bring out that vote, as you always do. You know, whenever I've served, even when I've been in the Clinton administration, or President Obama appointed me to be on the National Advisory Commission of FEMA, now in the Evers-Barnes administration, you know, it's all about our hometown, our home community. And people ask me at times, well, you're going to move to Madison. I say, you know what, I grew up here, I'm going to retire here, I'm going to be buried here. You know, this is what has propelled me as a person. And it's really the legacy. I stand on the shoulders of so many people. You know, I look at this community, I look at the great labor movement, which I came out of. You know, whether it be the UAW with the Wilsons, the Kuzels, Todd Onstead, Drews, so many others, the firefighters, the police, Bill Buzzes, the machinists, the Whitesides, the United Food and Commercial Workers, the Tenutas, my cousin Iris and the teachers, the laborers, Arvo Matson, EFL, Ron Frederick, who's not here tonight, Rick Gallo, who is. I mean, so many people. I think of the organizations, you know, the disability rights groups. Ron Frederick's here, the KAC, that I spent so much time, my favorite job of all time at the Friendship Camp that I love so dearly. You know, the women's groups, the Women's Horizons, Shalom Center, the NAACP, the scouting organizations. They're the ones that propel me and give me direction and strength and hope. And, you know, it's all because of that for any modest accomplishments I might have had. And I think back to so many of the greats who came before us, Joe Andrea, that set such a high bar for all of us. He would always say it really means something to represent Kenosha, Wisconsin. It was never Kenosha, it was always Kenosha, Wisconsin. And as John can tell you, for the two of us that served together, and then of course Jim and Bob afterwards, if there were 3 guys having a barbecue, that was a veterans meeting and you had to be there. So we didn't miss too many things, I gotta assure you. But, you know, so many great people. And he learned from the great George Molinaro, which there would not be a UW Parkside were it not for him. And then so many that followed, the mayor, the county executive that still serve this community so greatly, my great colleague Todd Onstead, Bob Wirch, that just fight tirelessly and continually to look out for the people of this area. And I have to say with some sadness, and I'm going to, in the end, make some remarks about Norm Seiler, but also I got a sad note today that another great Kenosian, Senator John Maurer, passed away today. And so such a sad day. You know, he set such a high bar as well for his dignity, his intelligence, his diligence. He served for so many years. He really helped to make Pleasant Prairie before Steiny followed up and really made it an incredible community. And I'm sure Steiny would tell you with all the hard work he did to build Pleasant Prairie over 20 years, John Maurer did so much prior to that. And John Maurer, I think we learned so much about the idea of dignity for whatever we might have, and trying to go to work every day and be learned about it and thoughtful. And so we're missing a great guy there. And if we could have a moment of silence, since he did just pass away today, I think that would be appropriate. So thank you so much. And, I know Jeff Neubauer, who we serve with, and John Steinbrink just after him, and Jeff's, of course, wife. There's not a more important election than Tuesday for so many reasons. But that Supreme Court is absolutely vital. You look at what happened in this state over the course of the last 8 years. You look at the idea that this Supreme Court refuses to recuse themselves when people are in front of them that have spent literally $1 million on their behalf. I mean, that's not the ethics that Lisa Neubauer would represent. When they voted after the open meetings law, which I spent more time in court than I ever could have imagined, all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they said it was okay that the open meetings laws were violated because essentially the legislature was repealing the legislation. Well, that's not the way legislation is repealed. And that's why this race is so vital, that we have those ethics represented. I'm so thankful that we have somebody, the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, Lisa Neubauer, running, and we have to make sure we turn out that vote like we did for Mandela Barnes and Tony Evers this coming Tuesday. And there's so many other important races at stake, too. We're going to hear from a couple people in a few minutes. But I also want to just mention, our courthouse personnel. This dinner's fantastic, and it's really, the Mary Kabickis, Joe Ellen, Becky, Mike Gravely, all of them that work so hard. Terry Jacobson, who always houses people in her house when we have campaigns here. They just work tirelessly there. We're just so lucky to have people like that take their jobs and go way beyond what their job duties are to stand up and fight for, all the things that are important. I also just have to mention in passing that I've been so lucky over the years with, so many in this room that have been on my campaign committees over the years. My wife, Kathy, it did so much. My late mother, who I miss so much. My cousin Iris, so many, the Tenuta sisters. Joe Gruber said, when they had a tough job, the standard they used, was it a 1 Tenuta job or a 2 Tenuta job? Pretty amazing, you think about it. But, the Wilsons, who have always been there. Hawbricks, Fultons, Ericksons, Phil Haney, always works hard. Joan Wilk, I see Tim Mahone, Johnny Antrami, Ed Kubicki. The list just goes on and on. Princess Leah there. It always helped. Mary Yonkers. I don't want to miss anybody, but I'll tell you, just fantastic. And Tony Garcia, school board member. Just so many. But whatever, just a few things I've mentioned in terms of whatever modest accomplishments I've had really came out of this community. Some of the things I was most proud of, like this oral chemotherapy bill, that came out of the health community. Health professionals like Joan, the Aurora people, the now Freighter people that work so hard and tirelessly to push to help to get those kind of things through. The telecommunications for the deaf. We have such an active, advocacy group for disabled people in this community. Things that we did in Congress. I think of like community health care. Lydia Spotza was here. Joan Wilk, Tim Mahone worked so hard that we got money passed for that thanks to Donna Shalala, who in the Clinton administration was Secretary of Health and Human Services. The Louis DeMarco Village, and Louis' name's on it, as appropriately should be. Tony Vallejo, my cousin Angie Pellegrino, that whole senior action team that worked so hard. That's what it was really all about to me, and just phenomenal. So let me just say a couple words about Norm Seiler, because he represented the kind of activism that you see in this room that has meant so much in terms of getting things done politically in this community and across the state. And you think of all the things he did. He retired rather than crossing a picket line. That's the kind of ethics that we have represented here today. Passion about labor issues. I think of Marvin, Mary Motter, how they keep that paper going just on their own, just amazing. Thank you so much for what you do there. He was such a great friend of labor, did so much for the Democratic Party. Transit, though, was really his passion, and he had me join as soon as I won my first race. I had to be part of the Kenrail committee, which really, so Labor Roundtable was 1 week, the next week was Kenrail. And we had to go to the train station and talk about how we could do to improve transit. And he was successful because of so many people like Johnny Antrami and Jim Cruiser, we just have great transit in this town. It really makes a difference. John, in terms of the city bus, Jim Cruiser at the regional line. All that stuff makes such a difference. But Norm Seiler, we salute you, we miss you, we'll look forward to memorializing you come June, and, just a tremendous person. So let me just end by saying, how fortunate we are that we have that dynamic duo of Nelson Mandela. I got a picture of Nelson Mandela in my office because he was one of my heroes in life, Mother Teresa. But I also have a picture of Mandela Barnes and Tony Evers in my office too, from that night of the great victory. That's sitting right on my shelf behind my desk. And but what a dynamic duo! I mean, they give each other energy. I mean, you watch them together, and what a great team they are. And what a great administration I believe they put together. Just so many terrific people they've surrounded themselves with. And, we could go through all the issues, but, we're not going to have an Act 10. We're not going to have a right to work type proposal. We're not going to have prevailing wages types of proposal because we have Tony Evers and we have Mandela Barnes. So thank goodness that you guys had the temerity and the strength and worked so tirelessly to win that election with the help of everybody in this room. So let me just say thank you so very much for the honor of representing you for so many years. And I can assure you that, in my current position, the Kenosha-Racine area is close and near and dear to my heart. In fact, we just provided this new website for state and local officials. So first call is to Terry Jacobson, talked to her treasurers, Mary Kubicki, Joe Ellen. I even talked to Becky. She didn't have anything to do with it. I didn't even think about it, but I brought it to her attention too. But we're going to do a lot of great things over the course of the next 4 years, and we'll hear from this great guy in a little bit. And thank you so very much for the honor. I appreciate it.
It is now my honor to bring up my state senator, probably most of our state senator, Bob Wirch. Bob is a champion of conservation, fiscal responsibility, and constituent services, and I'm proud to call him not only my state senator, but also my colleague. All yours.
Thank you. I think I died and went to heaven with all these Democrats surrounding me. If we could only do this in the state legislature. I was listening out there. I'm going to have to correct Peter Barca, though. When he talks about labor history, he forgot the American brass, where I came from. I'm a third-generation factory worker. Local 9322, United Steelworkers of America. Ron Frederick on the county board, used to be my union president. And I felt bad. I missed all of Peter's great speeches with Act 10. But I had a good excuse. I was in Illinois. And we'll give you an inside Madison story. So I heard before Todd saying, is it Antiramian or is it Antiramian? Well, before he became His Honor, in Madison they simply called him Ant-Man. But it's been a joy for me to serve with Pete, serve with John Steinbrink back there, serve with Todd. And, this is just a great area. And let me say one thing. I felt personally insulted in the last presidential election when Kenosha County went for Donald Trump. And my staff and I worked as hard as we could, handing out lit, nonpartisan lit. We called it informational pieces, just like the commercials. And all of us worked together to deliver this county for our governor and our lieutenant governor. And unfortunately, the other half of my district in Racine, didn't do as good a job as Kenosha. But clearly, we have always been a knock on doors, grassroots type of democratic machine here. And that's simply what we have to do in the future. There is so much cynicism about politics out there. There's so many people that don't know the issues that they get manipulated by these 30-second attack ads out there. And so we all have to work, considering the president we have, not only for our state, not only for our country, but for our democracy, so that we can be proud of national and state government in our state. One last thing. When Barack Obama was elected, a lot of Democrats made the big mistake, hey, we got him in, and they took a walk. And at that time, Mitch McConnell had taken a blood oath against Barack Obama. Well, I would suggest the same thing is happening, unfortunately, in our state with Tony. And so, we have to be with this governor and lieutenant governor each step of the way till we get a good budget in this state. So thank you for what you've done for me. Thank you for what you've done for the state. And let's keep working hard. Thank you.
Next, I would like to call up County Executive Jim Cruiser. Previously, Jim served as a Democratic leader in the State Assembly, and he has been such a key part in moving Kenosha County forward as such a great place to live, work, and play.
Thank you, Todd. Every day is a great day in Kenosha County. Wouldn't it be even better if we didn't have gerrymandered districts? How about that, Lieutenant Governor? Wouldn't that help make your job easier? I'm voting for Lisa Neubauer. There's only one thing to do between now and 8 o'clock Tuesday night. That's more. Get your friends and neighbors who weren't going to vote out to vote. That's a key vote. The most qualified person on the ballot. We need to get her elected. Top priority. Little redistricting wouldn't hurt Bob Wirch getting back on joint finance either. I'm for that. How about you, Mr. Mayor? Wouldn't you like that? Todd Onstead, with fair lines, you would have probably been on finance too by now. So, Peter Barca. I've seen Peter Barca up there, my successor, or my predecessor and successor. A man who made a difference no matter what walk of life you came from. If you were not treated justly, if you had an issue, he followed up. He, like he got better grades than I did, went to the school of Joe Andrea. 24-hour phone call, get them back, check it out. Doesn't matter if they live in your district. If you know them and they ask you, you do it. You made a difference. You continue to make a difference. You've influenced so many people. Those people who aren't with us anymore, and all of us here, are so proud of your appointment by our governor. Thank you, Peter Barca, for everything you continue to do. And every day is a great day in Kenosha County is because of the county board members here. How about it? Terry Rose, Boyd Frederick, we have Ed Kubicki, Andy Berg, and during their first election together, the tag team of Jennifer and John Franco I went to the kitchen table and I had my list of questions. I could feel the force. Holy cow. What about this? What about this? We're doing that. We're doing this. Oh, we're doing it this way. Oh, we got this covered. What a dynamic duo. Couldn't be prouder or more deserving of your award tonight. Congratulations. They're the real deal. I want to also thank our elected officials, Terry Jacobson, Joellen, Mary, Terry, Mike, Becky. You were hiding, Becky. Of course, Mike Gravely. It's a team. You have a lot of elected officials in county government working together with a new governor, and our lieutenant governor. Everything in Kenosha County will continue to get better every day to live, work, and play in Kenosha County. Thank you very much.
Well, we've heard that we have another election coming up, and the person who wins the election for the 64th Assembly District certainly will have big shoes to fill. I would like to now call up Gina Walkington, one of the candidates for that position.
Hello, I'm Gina Walkington. I am running for the 64th Assembly District. I want to thank the Kenosha County Democratic Party for putting this on and inviting me to speak. I want to congratulate John and Jennifer Franco for being recognized as the Democrats of the Year. It's a distinction that is so well deserved, as I think you very well illustrated. Peter, thank you for your service to the 64th District and the advice and guidance that you've given me and so many others over the years. So there's a quote from Teddy Roosevelt that I have been thinking about a lot lately that I wanted to share with all of you. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who at the best knows that in the end, triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. As our community continues to face new challenges, I believe it's time to dare greatly. When I recognized a need in the community for action and civic engagement, I teamed up with 3 other women and we founded Forward Kenosha, and together we took on Donald Trump and Paul Ryan. When I saw the rampant attacks on Planned Parenthood continue to increase, I stood up, I told my story, and I became a community organizer. When I was asked to run in an impossibly tough district, I stepped up and I took one for the team. It was incredibly hard, but our work, the work of many of you in this room, absolutely contributed to getting the statewide ticket over the line to a win. As a mother, an activist, and an organizer, I've always been committed to creating meaningful change. This campaign has given me the incredible experience of expanding the work that I've been doing in this community alongside all of you for years. I've been knocking on doors in the district, listening to your concerns and hearing your stories as you tell me what you want me to fight for. I'm committed to continuing to push for access to affordable health care, which I believe is a human right, and standing with Planned Parenthood to ensure that women have full control over their health care decisions. I'll continue to stand up for our kids and work to make sure that funding for public education is a priority. And whether it's restoring collective bargaining rights, fighting for a living wage, closing the gender pay gap, or delivering desperately needed paid family leave, I'm committed to standing up for workers in our community. One of the most important lessons I've learned from my work as a community organizer, which I am sure that Lieutenant Governor Barnes can attest to as a former community organizer himself, is just how powerful it is to empower those around you. As a legislator, I'm committed to lifting up the community, to empower others to share their stories, to speak up, and to have a say in the decisions that impact our everyday lives. Thank you all so much, and I'm asking for your support on the 2nd, Tuesday.
Well, thanks, Gina. Now I would like to bring up Tip McGuire, who's also running for the election on this Tuesday. Tip.
Well, thank you. And I want to start off by congratulating John and Jennifer Franco. I think this is an incredible accomplishment. You should be very proud. I also want to thank my good friend and mentor, Peter Barca, who taught me so much over the 5 years we worked together. I do have some funny stories about him, Mike, but I'm not going to use this opportunity to tell those. You can catch me afterwards if you'd like. Yeah. So I'm sure many of you have heard about who I am and my experience. I worked for Representative Barca in the legislature for 5 years. I was born and raised in this community, and I've served in a number of volunteer capacities on boards locally. But something about what John was saying earlier, about how if you think communication is about talking, then you haven't been listening. I wanted to assure you all that I have been listening. Earlier this week, I knocked on the door of a woman named Sylvia. And Sylvia told me her story. She stated that when she was in her middle ages, she went back to school to be a nurse. And she stated that she worked until she was 73 to be able to pay off the loans that she had taken out for that. She told me that the company she had worked for had mismanaged her 401k. They had taken their half and donated and bought company stock and then gone bankrupt. So she only had half of her retirement. She told me that on her limited income, she really couldn't make ends meet anymore, so she had taken out a loan against the house that she had previously paid off, that she had previously fully owned. And she told me that she was disappointed that she wouldn't be able to pass that home on to her children. I think this reminds me and us of what we're fighting for. We're fighting for educational opportunities that are affordable for people, so they don't have to go into debt to choose their profession. We're fighting for the opportunity to own a home and to retire, and the ability to pass that home on. And we're fighting for the opportunity to have affordable health care so we don't have to take loans against that home later. During my time working for Peter, and since, I've sought to amplify the voices of others in my community, whether it was through direct services to our state government, by getting them in touch with the appropriate people at the Department of Revenue, at the Department of Health Services, or by helping keep testimony open during Act 10 so that people's voices could be heard on legislation that they found objectionable, that they found would be harming them and their families. We worked to make sure that ordinary people had their voice heard in state government. I pledge to continue that. I pledge to continue a legacy of responsive representation that is close to the people. I'm very proud of my friend and mentor, Peter Barca, and I look forward to the opportunity to make sure the 64th Assembly District has responsive leadership to continue to amplify our community's voice. I'm asking for your support on April 2nd, this Tuesday. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to remind everybody that the election does not end on April 2nd. This is a primary election, and whoever wins on Tuesday will go on to face a Republican. So don't get too comfortable because the election will not be over. Well, we all have the program in front of us with a great biography of our keynote speaker. But I would just like to make a couple of personal remarks. At this year's inaugural ball, one of the highlights for me was seeing Mr. and Mrs. Jesse Barnes. They were undoubtedly the proudest parents in that very, very big room. Jesse is a UAW retiree and his wife was a public school teacher. Mandela is their son. A product of the Milwaukee school system, Mandela has served as a community organizer and in the state assembly. We were both elected in 2011, and I knew right away that Mandela Barnes would go on to bigger things. I didn't know where, and I don't know where the next move will be, but I'm quite sure that Mandela Barnes is not done yet. I could not be prouder than to stand here today and introduce our Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes.
Well, I want to thank you all so much. Thank you, Ty, for the introduction. Thank you all for being here. I want to take a second also to make sure we thank the wait staff who... If I do sound drowsy, it's because they gave me so much food and just enough to put me to sleep. But no, it is very much an honor to be here. John and Jennifer, again, thank you so much and congratulations. It's certainly well deserved. We know that the victory in November would not have happened if it were not for people like you and everybody else in the room. So the award was well deserved, and I just want to give you another round of applause. We appreciate having you. Happy birthday again, Carol. Happy birthday again. Yeah. See, a new trick I developed is you get the early applauses, you get those done early, and then you get into the speech. Also, Peter, it's an honor to have served with you, and it's okay if you call me Nelson. Peter did give me a very large Nelson Mandela for President poster. So that is, I will never forget that. I truly appreciate that, Peter. When I was first elected to the State Assembly, Peter was a leader. He drove down to Milwaukee. He was somebody who was very active as a leader all across the state. Whoever replaces Peter in the Assembly is going to have some very big shoes to fill. Also a big gulp. If you know Peter, Peter Barca and his big sodas. You're also going to have some big pockets to fill because Peter has like 5 cell phones. You know, honestly, there's a reason that so many people have called you to leadership, whether it was President Clinton, President Obama, or now Governor Evers. I'm very excited that you are a part of this administration. Your energy is unmatched, and I am excited to be working with you once again in this capacity. And Todd, thank you so much for the introduction. You didn't know where I'd be going, but I'm here. When I was here last year, the primary was just starting to get heated up, and I was very nervous, just going around the state, talking to people about the issues that I thought were important, which turned out to be the issues that were important. People have been left behind for a very long time in the state of Wisconsin. People have felt like their voices have not been heard, and when they say how are you going to connect with people, how do you connect with younger voters, how do you connect with communities of color, the answer is you should just probably go talk to them. Find out when we begin to have those conversations that matter, we tend to see results that are in our favor. And that's ultimately me how we won. It was through organizing. It was through ideas. It was through energy. It was not about running against the old governor. It was about running on our agenda, our plan to make the entire state of Wisconsin more whole once again. And that will have to be our strategy. That will be our 2020 vision when we send Donald Trump home, because Donald Trump will not win the state of Wisconsin again. We all know what a disaster this administration has been, the presidency has been, excuse me, not this. Our administration is lovely. We all know what a disaster the presidency has been, and we see our reputation globally in decline. We get it, we understand it, but that's not what's going to get people to come out to vote. Voter turnout was at a historic low in 2018 or in 2016. In 2018, we brought that back with a historic high in voter turnout. We have to have that in 2020, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't matter who the candidate is. It does matter, but for this conversation, it doesn't matter, because as long as we are leading with a vision, we will win. And I am happy. I invite even more candidates to come into this primary, because as frustrating as it may be, as long as debates may go on, the fact is that means there are more people across the country carrying a message about a new direction for the United States of America. More people. It shows a certain enthusiasm. The same way as our primary grew to about, 16 people at one point, there were 10 people on the ballot. It helped us. It helped our candidate become stronger for the general, because Governor Evers was battle tested. He had the chance to have those debates, and he proved himself through that primary. And another reason why we were able to win is because we had so many fantastic candidates, not just running for governor. We had so many fantastic candidates for the assembly, so many candidates for the state assembly. And I actually want to take a second to recognize you all. If you were on the ballot last year at any point, I want you to stand up and be recognized, because our victory was due largely in part to your hard work on the ground. So please, if you are in the room, stand up. I see Lori Hawkins. I see Gina, I see Todd, I see Peter. Good to see you, man. And that's the same kind of energy we have to carry into 2020. And our first test is going to be on Tuesday, April 2nd, when we all show up for Lisa Neubauer to send her to the Supreme Court. And I'm very aware that that's not a message that I have to deliver to this room. I know everybody in this room is going to go out, make it happen, going to vote for the right person, vote for the right candidate who's going to do the best job for the people of the state of Wisconsin, the person who is impartial, the candidate who does not care what your background is, doesn't care what your sexual orientation is, the candidate who will rule and govern on the bench with fairness and equality in mind and equity in mind. I know you're going to go out and support that candidate, but like the county executive, Jim Cruiser, said, we need to make sure that you go out, talk to your friends, your family members, your neighbors in these last 50 or so hours. Go talk to strangers. Talk to anybody who seems like they are of voting age. Have a conversation with them. You bump into somebody at the grocery store, talk to them. Let them know that there's an election coming up, because far too many people don't know that there's a race coming up. We have a lot of elections in the state of Wisconsin, and we need everyone to be as active in a race like this as they are in a presidential year, because issues like gerrymandering are going to come up. Issues like whatever came up in the lame duck session, the Supreme Court is going to have to rule on those at some point. And we need to make sure that we are ready for next year, when there's another Supreme Court race that will determine the balance of power. We need to make sure that we restore fairness to the bench. And again, it starts on Tuesday. So please take that message to your friends, your family members, and neighbors, because we have to make it happen. Now, I'm very excited, because we introduced our budget not too long ago, and a lot of this speech may sound like the campaign speech. And there's a good reason that it's going to sound like the campaign speech, and that's because we're keeping our campaign promises. So the things we talked about up until November of last year are the same things that we're proud to stand for and fight for right now as we are governing, as we work to build this people's budget. And it's truly a people's budget, because it's not what the most powerful lobbyists or what the wealthiest donors said we should put into the budget. It's what we got from actual conversations when we traveled to each corner of this state and asked people to give their input and to explain to us what a more fair Wisconsin looks like, what a Wisconsin budget that's based on equity and sustainability would look like. And so it's no secret that high on the list of popular items was restoring scientists back to the DNR. And that's why we have new funding for more science positions in the Department of Natural Resources. We want to make sure that clean water is a priority, and that's why we declared 2019 the year of clean drinking water in the state of Wisconsin. Now, I usually tell people to hold the applause on that part because safe drinking water should be something basic. It should be something we've come to expect, but through years of neglect, the idea that climate change isn't real. You know, I see the old governor trying to battle troll AOC on Twitter every day, posting ham sandwiches. The guy is, I don't know, he's growing weirder and weirder by the day. But I am not going to take my climate scientist from a guy who does not know what a Venn diagram looks like. And we do understand this very real threat, and with that threat, we know that Wisconsin can be a leader in combating climate change. We know that we can get the state back to our manufacturing roots when we invest in renewable energy here in Wisconsin, the thousands of components that it takes to build a windmill, solar manufacturing, installation, maintenance. These are jobs that we're missing out on here in Wisconsin. Consumers spend about $12 billion out of state to meet our energy needs. That's money that could be spent right here. There's no oil under our feet, there's no coal in the hills, but we do have sun, we have wind. We have the opportunity to generate energy here in Wisconsin and become a leader, not to just combat climate change, but to be on the forefront of renewable energy technology. And that's why we also put money in the budget for research, because the technology that exists today will be much different in the next 10 years. And our university system should be on the front lines, leading that research and leading that innovation. We have to make sure that we restore our rightful place. We have to make sure that we once again regain our Wisconsin idea. Another issue of democracy. We can't talk about that enough because, if we had fair maps in this state, a lot of the people in this room would be in the legislature who were on the ballot last year. I have no doubt that Gina would be in the assembly or Lori would be in the state senate if we had more fair maps, because we have the better candidates. We have the better message. The fact is we wouldn't have won every statewide election if that weren't the case. Republicans got 46% of the vote, 63% of the seats in the assembly. That is a travesty. That is a shame. That is an affront to democracy. I mean, you look at other countries, we'd be ready to replace their leadership with that style of governing. But we do know that a new day is possible because the public is on our side on issues like fair maps and also issues like automatic voter registration, because we know more people voting makes for a more healthy democracy. And when people have access to the ballot, that means that policymakers, it means that leaders have to actually listen. What a concept. For too long, people have been able to ignore the will of the people. When you exist in your own self-drawn, gerrymandered bubbles, you tend to ignore what people have to say. You tend to ignore the real and pressing issues that are impacting so many people. Things like income inequality don't matter to Republican leaders in gerrymandered districts. Access to quality and affordable health care don't matter to them because they only have to worry about a primary challenge. They don't have to face the real public. They don't have to answer and meet the needs of so many people in the state of Wisconsin who've been suffering. But that's why we're making sure that democracy will once again be restored here in Wisconsin. And, if you remember during the campaign, they said we're going to raise the gas tax $1. We're only raising it 8 cents. And it's a modest increase to make sure that, people are able to get from point A to point B without having to spend hundreds of dollars per year on average for repairs to their vehicle. We can't continue to kick the can down the road. This is a mature solution to a problem that's persisted for far too long. It's been caught in political gridlock for a very long time. And we are here to make sure that we fund our roads. We also make sure that we're funding our public transportation infrastructure as well, because people, job seekers, need to be able to get from point A to point B. A couple other issues. I can go back to the DNR piece, but I am so excited that the governor is allowing me to take the lead on renewable energy work, and that's why we're going to make sure that we revamp our existing Office of Energy Innovation and transform it into the Office of Clean Energy and Sustainability, because we have needs that must be met here in Wisconsin. Again, it goes back to us being a leader once again. And we can't talk about the role of the environment. We can't talk about the impact of the environment without talking about access to quality and affordable health care, meaning that we put expansion of Medicaid, expanding Badger Care, making sure that 80,000 more people will be covered in the state of Wisconsin. We put that in the budget because that is our commitment for a more healthy Wisconsin. And it's not just for people who are eligible for Badger Care. This is for everybody, because this is how Minnesota's cost of health insurance is significantly less than ours. It's about bringing more competition to the market. And, when they talk about school choice and school vouchers, they'll say we need more competition for schools, which is absurd. But when we talk about healthcare, they don't want more competition in the market for healthcare, because that's where they're getting the campaign money from, the insurance lobby, and all these people who are funding their races. And we know that they wouldn't exist if it were not for those types of interests, and they would not exist in leadership. Speaker Robin Vos, his speakership hinges on gerrymandering. That's why he's so adamantly opposed to redistricting reform. And so healthcare as a priority, to make sure that we can be competitive, to make sure that we're a state that you can come and start a small business and not worry about the cost of healthcare. Where you graduate college, you're a job seeker, you don't have to worry about not being on your parents' health insurance. You look at the sabotage, the Affordable Care Act is coming from every direction, and not taking that Medicaid expansion is another form of sabotage of the Affordable Care Act. So not only should we expand Medicaid, we have to make sure that it's a program that can be accessible to anybody who needs it. And there were Badger Care for all bills that came up in the legislature in the last session. And these are all things that we have to explore. The cost of health insurance is through the roof. And you look at prescription drugs, which is driving the cost of health care across this country. You look also at, on the topic of prescription drugs, these drug companies that have manufactured the opioid crisis. That's why I'm happy they're finally being held accountable. The Sackler family, $250 million, if I'm not mistaken, the lawsuit that they're going to have to pay out for destroying families. But at the same time, the cost is immeasurable to what they, as in what they've done to neighborhoods and families and communities. And yet, you see so many people in the legislature who are opposed to medical marijuana, which we also put in the budget. And Speaker Vos said it's a poison pill. And the only poison pill are the actual pills that are being pumped into communities that are tearing families apart, or tearing neighborhoods and communities apart. And you look at any state, whether it's full recreational marijuana or medical marijuana, you don't see marijuana ruining communities, destroying lives like a lot of these prescription drugs are. If anything, medical marijuana is bringing families closer together. I am paying very close attention to who laughed at that one. If anything, it has been an alternative for so many people who are dealing with pain and who are dealing with ailments, and would prefer to not have to only resort to highly addictive pain medication, because it is a very real thing, and we have to have solutions for people, again, to not just make our state whole, but to make this entire country whole. Education. Very important issue for me as a public school graduate. My mother is a retired public school teacher. To see what's going on with these systems, with multiple systems being funded by the state, and it creates more inequality. It exacerbates inequality. And we have to first make sure that we are funding our public schools. We also have to make sure that our children are being taken care of, because they aren't showing up to school on level playing field. We need to make sure that early childhood education is available to families, so that when they show up to school in K4 and K5 in first grade, that they are ready to learn. And that's why, we're expanding dental services to make sure that we can address problems before they get too out of control. And that's another piece of healthcare as well, because students who aren't well taken care of, who don't get their health needs addressed, have poor performance than students that do. Students who show up to school hungry, students who have mental health needs that go unaddressed, they don't learn the same, and we have to make sure that we are creating a more fair and a more equal system. We have to promote equity and sustainability, and then if you graduate from a high school in the state of Wisconsin, regardless of your immigration status, you should be able to go to school at in-state tuition. And we also have to make sure that students who graduate are able to do so without being burdened by student loan debt. And that's why the governor has called for a commission to study how we could refinance student loans in the state of Wisconsin. Peter Barca is going to be a part of that, task force. And so it's all up to you to make sure that we get rid of student loans completely in Wisconsin, Peter Barca. This is not a Tony Evers promise. This is a Mandela Barnes edict to Peter Barca to end student loans in the state of Wisconsin. And we've also called for increased funding to the EW system to the tune of $150 million. If you look 2 years ago, there was a $250 million cut. And I know you can't solve problems just by throwing money at it, but you don't make things better when you take money away. When you strip our most valuable institutions, our most precious institutions, of their resources, you do a number on the entire state. We deserve to be a leader once again, and we can do that. And that's, again, why we put together this budget. But looking forward, as Democrats, we have a task ahead. We got the DNC coming next year. But with the DNC comes a responsibility. And that responsibility is to win next year. And our story in Wisconsin is one of resilience. Our story in Wisconsin is one of the common person. We could have gone to Miami. We could have had the DNC on yachts. But that's not what we stand for right now. We're not the party of yachts. We're not Betsy DeVos. We are the party of working men and women. We are the party of people like my grandfather, who moved to Milwaukee after he served in World War II, who found a job at A.O. Smith and worked there for over 30 years and retired comfortably. This is just like my mother, a retired public school teacher. This is the story that we have to promote, because these are the voters that we've lost touch with. This is how we win, when we get younger people out to vote, when we get a more diverse voting bloc. When we have these when we have these conversations in communities of color, that is how we win. And Milwaukee was a fantastic choice, not just because I live there, not just because I have an opportunity to serve on the host committee. It is a good idea because it shows the direction that the party will be headed in going into 2020, going into 2022 and beyond. We are a state that is capable and ready to take on Donald Trump and to take on his disastrous policies and show the world what it looks like when we put leadership forward, when we lead with a vision. So with that being said, we got a lot of doors to knock on. We got a lot of phone calls to make. We have a lot of organizing that has to happen in the interim. And we also have to make sure that we are recruiting the best candidates who actually connect with communities, candidates who represent what Wisconsin looks like, candidates who represent what this nation looks like. That's how we win. And we built this broad, multi-ethnic, multi-racial, pluralistic coalition of labor, business leaders, immigrants, black people, white people, Asian, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, because we are stronger than what Donald Trump would like us to be. We are stronger than the picture that he paints. We are better than the picture he paints. We are more than the picture he paints, and we can show people that. When we can paint our picture, our idea, our 2020 vision for America, that is when we'll be the most successful. And I had a chance to talk with Elizabeth Warren, had a chance to talk with Beto, had a chance to talk with Bernie, and I've said the same thing to everybody. We win with a vision. We win when we talk about our principles. We win when we talk about our ideas. We win when you have conversations with the people that you know. We all know people who don't plan to vote or who are disgruntled with politics, who see it and say, this doesn't affect me, or I don't want to have anything to do with it because it's too stressful. There's too much going on. But let me tell you, the alternative, another 4 years down this path, I don't want to think about. I don't want to think about what it'll look like. I don't want to think what it'll mean for future generations. But I'm inspired by the leadership that we do see, because in response to 2016 and 2018, not just here in Wisconsin, but across the country, we elected the first 2 Native American women to Congress. We elected the first 2 Muslim women to Congress. There are now more women in Congress than ever before in the nation's history, if I'm not mistaken. This is a younger Congress than we've ever had in this country. And it is a Congress that is right for this moment. It is a Congress that is ready to take on the threat of this presidency. But here at home, we have to continue down the path that we started last November and stand firm on our rich progressive traditions, our rich progressive values. We know the issues that we're dealing with, and we know that progress has never been an easy process, but the Wisconsin idea, the concept that was written in the state statute that was almost eliminated by the former governor, that signified that general principle that education should influence people's lives beyond the boundaries of the classroom. It's that philosophy of our university system, with the second aspect being the effort to ensure well-constructed legislation aimed at benefiting the greatest number of people, which ultimately led to that series of political reforms in the late 19th and early 20th century. This was directly in response to the rise of big business in the 1870s that created an oligarchy of wealthy businessmen, wealthy elites. It created a total imbalance of income inequality. But the progressive movement wanted to restrict the power of corporations when it interfered with the needs of citizens. We find ourselves in that same exact moment. If you look at the way corporations have been allowed to write the rules and give unlimited sums of money to political efforts, to have legislation written in their favor, to have governing only support their interests, we have to return power back to the people. That's what the Democratic Party stands for. That's what this administration stands for, and that's what the campaign in 2020 will hinge on. If you look at the reforms that were included, whether it was open primary elections, workers' comp, the state regulation of railroads, regulation of insurance, child labor laws, forest and water conservation, we are in that same exact moment once again. And if we look at that type of forward thinking, the forward thinking that it was back then is still forward thinking today as we've been taking steps backwards. And you look at a fighting Bob LaFollette, and when he said that democracy is a life, that's recording, and it involves continual struggle, a continual struggle for our environment, a continual struggle for health care, for education, for justice, a state that is in deep need of criminal justice reform, where we spend $1.5 billion to put people in prison, spending more money on corrections than we do on our entire university system. The time for change is now, and that's why we will need you every step of the way during this budget process, because they don't get it in the legislature. The majority party, it is an illegitimate majority, if we're going to be completely honest. They were elected on unfairly drawn maps, but want to continue to hold on to power. And that's why we saw the lame duck session. It was good enough for Republicans when they had a Republican governor, but when Republicans saw a Democratic governor, it wasn't all right. It's a little thing we're going to call right privilege. A couple people got it, Jesus. Tough crowd. Right privilege, you didn't see a play on words? I was like, that was a good one if I must say so myself. But here in Wisconsin, where my home, where I was born, on 26th and Locust, in the heart of the 53206 zip code, our state's poorest, our nation's most incarcerated zip code, to a union family, in a union household. My fight for the rights of working people is so that every child can have the same opportunity that I had, regardless of their zip code, regardless of their family's income, regardless of what county they come from. Too many people have been forgotten, but that time is done. We are no longer in the business of leaving people behind, because the only way we move forward is if we do it together. And that's why we have to make sure that we're bringing the most impacted voices to the table. We are in a crisis mode, whether it's the existence of the planet and the idea that we have to make clean air and water a priority and understand that the people who pollute should have to pay for it or fix it. We have to make sure that we look at healthcare as an issue of morality, the same way we look at fully funding our schools to diminish, to break down these barriers that create that system of inequality. It means prioritizing education over incarceration. It means we reduce the amount of nonviolent offenders and be in the business of saving lives instead of warehousing them. This nation, this state, deserves an economy that works for everybody. And that's why we have to have an increase in the minimum wage. It hasn't gone up in 10 years. Hard-working people are struggling to make ends meet. Mothers and fathers don't have paid time off to take care of their families. We have to transition our entire economy for the future, using the issue of climate change and using the efforts to combat climate change as an opportunity to create jobs, to save our economy and save the earth. That's how we work to build a more equitable and a more sustainable state. We deserve to be a leader once again, and I believe that we can. But it's going to take so much work to make it happen. It's going to take all of you in this room and beyond. Across this entire state, there's healing and there's growth that must happen, because if you look down at the southern border where families are being separated, children being put in cages, and you look at the government shutdown where people who work for the federal government, people who are actually working for the United States, weren't getting paid, and the people who were on the lowest rung of that income ladder, some of them still haven't been paid. And we know that unpaid labor in America is what made this nation great in the first place. And that's why Make America Great Again never resonated. And so we have a duty, because despite everything that's gone wrong, we are a nation, we are a state that has proved before that we can do great things. And in this moment, we are a state that will prove once again that we can do great things. And while we have yet to manifest the dreams of the progressive movement in whole, we are mid-stride in the march for justice and for equality. We all have a duty to speak up, to speak out, and a right to be heard. We are all charged to rise up, to do better, to make better happen. In this new year, we must all resolve to be involved for children, for the poor, for the hungry, for the immigrant, for the LGBTQ community, for working men and women, for communities of color, for everybody who has been left behind, for the Wisconsin, for the America that we all want to see and live in. Our moment is now, and we don't have a moment to waste. I want to thank you all for being here with me. I will see you all when I see you. I will see you on the doors. I will see you on the phones. I will see you in the neighborhoods. And I will see you at the ballot box.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for our Lieutenant Governor, Mandela Barca. And also another round of applause for our Secretary Designee, Peter Barca. And also to John and Jen. It has been a pleasure to be the MC tonight. Truly an honor, just as it's an honor to represent the 57,000 people in the 65th Assembly District. Now, in just a couple of minutes, there's going to be some lucky winners here, not only of the drawing, but also of the silent auction. So once again, I'd like to just close by saying thank you to all for being here, and also to thanks to the Italian American for the great hospitality and the great dinner that we had tonight. See you soon.